I look like an absolute maniac because I'm standing in my underwear outside of a car in the middle of an empty parking lot. We had some adventures, my friend.
Welcome into the Get Invested podcast, a podcast about all things real estate and real estate investing, brought to you by Capital Velocity Investments and a part of the Matthias Talks Investing Substack.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Get Invested podcast with your host, Jordan.
And Matthias.
And we're both excited to talk about all things investing, real estate, and real estate investing. Going to have a more of a philosophical topic today, so we'll have to make sure we don't bloviate too much. That's too easy to do, so we'll keep a close eye on that. But before we jump into our discussion, Matthias, I know we talked last week about this being the kind of first time the whole fam had gone real life camping, I guess you could call it, not in the backyard. How'd that go?
The way I've been describing it to people is that the Wilson family built some character over the weekend. That's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically we went Saturday midday through Monday midday because Monday was a holiday.
Right.
Kids are out of school and everything. So that was our plan. And as the week went on leading up to it, we saw the forecast for Saturday night getting worse and worse. Basically called for 30-degree temps and moisture, lots of it. We were hoping it was never going to be that much. So the Saturday rolls around. It kind of sprinkles all afternoon Saturday. Not too bad, but overnight it started getting really cold. And then come like 10 o'clock, 10:30, it started raining pretty good. And I don't know why I would have expected anything different, but the tent that we had, it's a cool tent, big tent. There's two separate sections. There's one where you can fit like a no kidding adult air mattress in for Jen and I to sleep on. And then the boys had their little section where we had their little mats and sleeping bags on top of that. But this is an old tent. It's been through garage sales. It was eventually given to us by Jen's parents from back when they used to do camping. They used to go up to North Carolina every fall and they would enjoy the colorful leaves. Anyway, this is not a new tent, and I expected some leaks. I did not expect the sieve. We had standing water in the tent. It was dripping on our heads as we were laying. There was only a few spots in the tent where you were safe. So by the end of the night, it was Jen was a Gore-Tex mummy, and then the boys were huddled around me on the air mattress island. And that's basically how we survived the night. I'm not gonna say anybody got any good sleep, but we survived the night. At some point, I heard it turn from rain to freezing rain / sleet. You can hear by that because it's like hard. It's like solid objects hitting it. Then I heard it go quiet where it was still dripping the same amount, which means it had turned to snow. Everything in the tent was soaked. We had an electrical space heater. It's not industrial, so it only gets to a certain temperature. It can't get to where it burns you when you touch it. Like it just does not get that hot. But it's a fan and a heater, so it kept us from jumping in the car basically. But we got everything soaked. A lot of our changes of clothes were soaked. We had sitting in bags because there was literally street puddles in our tent. Yeah, so we learned a lot that night. That one that we were going to throw away the tent after the trip, but that was probably the biggest thing we learned. I was hoping the rainfly would do better than it did. It just did not. It wasn't pouring, it was just steady rain. That shouldn't get through as much, but it's just an old tent, and we kind of did it to ourselves. So that was a rough night. The only reason I didn't call it quits is that I knew the next night was calling for completely clear. It was going to be cold again, but it was going to be completely clear and dry. So we weren't going to be wet again because nobody could handle any more wet. We were done with that.
Right. Now, I mean, were you able to dry out the tent?
Yeah.
And your clothing?
Part 2 of the story.
Okay. Wow.
So,
all right.
It came up sunny, which was nice. So we opened up the tent to let the sun in, and we kept the heater going like full blast all day. We dragged everything out. Stuff that was just damp, we laid it in sun. But a lot of the bedding, sleeping bags, pillows, things like that were pretty wet. So Jen drove back to town like 20 some odd minutes away to a laundromat and just took over like 3 dryers and just threw everything in there.
Oh, okay. You didn't figure out how to do it.
We did well.
We had intervention.
We had a campfire, but we did not want everything to be just smoky and
right.
You know what I mean? And I granted Jen that there was no reason to torture ourselves after the night we just went through, especially on Jen's first full camping trip.
Right. Right.
So we finally get all that done. Jen's about finished at the laundromat and is picking up more firewood and kind of stuff and heading back. And I'm taking the boys fishing. So I took the boys a few minutes away to the marina and we start throwing some fishing lines off the dock. Or I split the boys up so they don't snag each other,
Sure.
because that'll happen. Which I thought was a great idea until I was helping Ethan and I'm looking this way. He's looking at me and he goes, "Oh my gosh." And I hear splash, which means that Aaron has gone in the drink. Now, he's a little fish for a 4-year-old, but he was not prepared for, I don't know, 50-degree water.
Yeah. And definitely not a controlled environment like the pool.
Nope, he's wearing all his clothes. He's got flannel. So I'm obviously all geared up. I've got phone in one pocket, car keys in the other pocket. Jen's 30 minutes away. And I'm like, the only way I'm going to be able to get this kid warm is in the car. So I can't go get him until I get this stuff out. So I'm like ripping stuff out of I'm looking at him and he comes up and he's pretty panicked, but he's treading water. And I'm like, "I'm coming, buddy. I'm coming. But like it's going to be a lot worse if I can't get this stuff out of my pockets before I come get you."
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that deep there. I knew he probably wouldn't touch. That made sense to me. But once I got like my shoes and thank God of my shoes because it was the only pair I had, that would have been miserable. But my shoes, pants, like I just kind of ripped all that stuff off and go in. It's like 7 feet deep. I was like, oh. So I'm not just going to pick him up and carry him in. I am swimming him back in. But I happened to snag the fishing rod as I'm swimming towards him, and I bounce off the bottom and I come back up. I'm like, okay, so it's deep. Swim him in. Obviously, it's very cold. It's maybe 45 to 50 in the air temp range at that point, so it's not frigid outside. But we got 15, 20 miles an hour wind coming off the water, so it is not pleasant to be wet in that. And he's got no fat on his body or anything, so he's just like chattering. He's like, ooh. So I lead him over to the car, which is only 40 yards away. Go to the car, and I have Ethan. I'm Ethan. Go grab the keys, grab the phone, so I can call mom. And Ethan's Johnny on the spot, which is pretty awesome to have some help in that because that would have been miserable. I'd have been running back and forth and stuff. We get Aaron to the car. I get him all stripped down, and I throw him in the driver's seat. Like the heat's on.
Yeah.
Put him in there with the seat heater on and full blast on the heater, and he gets warmed up pretty quick. I look like an absolute maniac because I'm standing in my underwear outside of a car in the middle of an empty parking lot. There's some people driving by just checking out the marina. It cracked me up because I knew what was going on. They're doing the intentionally do not look over at the crazy man, do not look at the crazy man, do not engage.
Why were you not jumping in the car to get warm yourself?
Well, we had stuff scattered everywhere. I'm trying to get a hold of Jen because here's the other problem. All those clothes, they're in Jen's car. We don't have anything to change into. So
right.
I'm trying to avoid getting my car completely wet because it's our only source of heat at the moment. So I'm trying to dry myself off as much as I can. I'm taking my sweater off. So I'm just down to basically t-shirt and underwear at that point, taking my socks off, and talking to Ethan because basically Ethan's going to stay with our stuff and collect the rest of our fishing gear. And I'm going to drive Aaron back to our campsite where I can wrap him in at least the 2 dry blankets that we have in the tent, and with the heater going, which it's actually a really balmy temperature in there now with the sun beating on it and sealed up. So I'm like, okay. So I go do that, drive a naked kid around, throw a naked kid in the tent on top of the air mattress and wrap him all in blankets, and he's good to go. And then I still don't have any clothes to change into, so I hop back in the car and drive back to pick up Ethan and all the rest of our stuff. And by then, Jen has reached the tent with Aaron, and so she's getting him dressed, and he was good. Actually, I carry him to the bushes on the way in because I'm like, the only reason this kid's going to get out of bed while I'm gone is because he has to pee. So I carry him over to the bushes. He pees in the bushes, and I put him in the bed. So we definitely had some adventures. Jen showed up with all the rest of the clothes. Everything was dry. I took a shower. I hadn't planned on taking a shower, but there was a nice facility there. It was actually in really good shape. So I finally was able to get redressed and everything. But we had some adventures, my friend.
Well, so did you ever get any kind of explanation, backstory, sequence of events that led to him falling in?
So I think he was reeling his rod in, and the way the current was running, it was running the bobber's back end and over to the left from where he was sitting. And I think his hook got caught on like one of the pier poles, basically. Yeah. And the bobber goes under. And I think he couldn't see the bobber, so he was trying to get a better look at the bobber. Maybe he even felt something if it got,
Yeah.
if it kind of, as he's reeling, it gets hooked. And he thinks, oh my gosh, I might have a fish. And maybe even he pulls on it expecting it to give.
Yeah,
and it didn't, and he kind of went with it. I don't know. I didn't see it. All Aaron ever said was, I was trying to see my bobber. And then afterwards, he did say that he didn't want to go fishing anymore. And I was like, we're probably done fishing, bud. So that's good. But he was a little trooper, man. He was a little trooper. Kept his head above. He never went under.
That's good that he just popped up and treaded and just waited for you to get in a position to be able to come get him. What were their thoughts the night before when they were dealing with just like dripping water into a tent?
Aaron was always fine. Where his sleeping bag happened to be one of the more dry spots. Ethan was definitely getting wet, and he was getting cold before we discovered the extent of how much water was getting. Because it's hard, it's dark. It's hard to tell exactly how much is coming in. We can hear it dripping, but you never know. But once they got into the bed, we were all pretty cold. We just kind of huddled together and threw every dry thing we had on top of us. And they were fine with it. Nobody really got any good sleep, but we were all in and out. And you know how it is when you're cold and wet too. You kind of got to go to the bathroom like every 20 minutes, it seems like. Yep. And so there was a lot of that.
Yeah. Which means you're traipsing through the water and then out into the rain.
And then exactly. And opening the tent flap and the heater, letting the heated air out and all that. So but there was no complaining on the kids. All the complaining was coming from those 30 and above.
I thought maybe you would take this opportunity to just like tell some old war stories or basic training, or what's the one you did in the Pacific Northwest? I forget.
Survival school, SEER school. Yeah, I mean, we weren't quite that close because I've never been more miserable than I was laying in ice in just a sleeping bag. That was the coldest I've ever been. But this was pretty cold and pretty miserable. I knew how it was going to go. I feel like, so it was like I was always okay with it. I never got too bad. I just tried to get whatever sleep that I could. And the boys were just like, whatever, this is what it is. And they, like, Aaron was getting upset when I threw the tent away when we were packing up to leave. He was, he thought we were never going camping again. He was like, no. And I was like, no, buddy, it's just this tent. We're going to get a better tent. Daddy's going to spring for the most dry tent you could possibly imagine after the trip we had. But
his normal frugality out the window. This is going to be the Taj Mahal. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a fortress.
Yeah, especially if we're going to be able to talk Mom to go and camping with us again. It's going to be a palace, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of a cliche, but life lessons and camping kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. So. It was great. I enjoyed a whole lot of it. Even him falling in didn't bother me that much. It was like, that's part of life, and I was there. There was some actions that had to take place, but there was never any panic or anything. And I do my cold plunges, so it was like, well,
here we go.
I wasn't planning on doing one today, but here we are.
Sounds like this time you actually did a cold plunge rather than my joke of cold immersion.
Yes. This one I jumped in.
You plunged.
That is true. Somebody was asking if I yelled cannonball when I did it, and I was like, no, I did not yell cannonball as I went to save my drowning son.
I'm sure you were just trying to as calmly and normally as one does jump off a pier.
Yes, exactly. How does one jump off a pier in a way that instills confidence?
Yeah. Good thing you guys have both cars, I guess. That was pretty crucial.
Yeah. So what did you do for your weekend? Anything fun?
With those scintillating stories, I'm gonna have to keep it short over here. Honestly, I had a project was the big thing that I did. We have these barn doors that are the door to our master bath and the laundry room. One of these is an okay idea, if one were to ask me in retrospect.
I'm guessing the laundry is okay.
Yes, the laundry one works perfectly fine. It makes a lot of sense, and it's a nice decorative door for the hallway, right? Looks great. No issues, but the privacy is lacking since the door just slides in front. Now, it's not that big of a deal for the two of us, really, other than, and this actually gets to one of the things I was doing. But speaking of, we're going to jump into the long-term view in planning in a world that often encourages perhaps or leads one to be short-term.
Mm-hmm.
But on that note, a couple of things. One, when purchasing the house, Rachel really liked the doors. I like that she liked them. They look good. They're nice. They're very nice, like very solid, cool doors. We should have thought about the fact that the two previous owners, the one who put them in and then the person who bought them from that person, lived alone. So yeah,
that'll do it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you can't stop, say, my cat Loki, who's 13 pounds, and sometimes just decides that they want to just shoulder the door, and it just nicely glides down the rail all the way open. Yep, exactly. So, and one of the things that I was fixing was one of those things where they didn't secure it enough for the weight of the door. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, whoever put it in, and say that they were trying to limit the amount of exposed screws and stuff, because that's part of the effect, right? It's like a board and then a rail on that board and then the barn door on that, right? So the rail covers a decent amount of whatever you've used to fasten the board, but it's still there. So it was pulling away from the wall. Because again, these doors are rather heavy. And so I had to essentially take the door off, take the rail off, and like reattach all of it. And honestly, because where it hangs constantly, it's just too much weight for, because especially you're just putting this on a wall. Like I don't know, they kept missing studs. They had like drawn lines on the board and screwed. And so I'm like, oh, okay, clearly this is a stud, because there's no way this thing is hanging without it being a stud right here, right? Drill in, and I'm like, I'm tightening down the ones that are existing, and half of them just spin in place. I'm like, what is, not half, that's an exaggeration, but like, what is happening? So I have to like find the actual studs. I mean, I don't know, they migrated. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I mean, they just missed them on occasion, but I end up having to do a toggle bolt at one place, which is not pretty, but the door's not, this thing ain't coming down.
It's not hanging. Yeah.
It's up there. So that was but we got in the project and I was like, I never, it was just one of those things where I was like, I never realized this. Like, wait a second, these stoppers like actually move better, and we can like move them so the door, for instance, when Loki decides to bang it open, doesn't like run into anything. And now it's like very, but so just a bunch of stuff like that is what was getting into. We realized, I was like, wait a second, this door handle is on the wrong side. So I swapped that, like a bunch of stuff like that is what I did over the weekend primarily. What else? I don't know. I feel like I should come up with something that we did as a couple. The pressure's on every time now, Matthias.
Yeah.
I got a haircut and a teeth cleaning in like short succession, so I'm feeling very, very much more
put together
than I did like 2
there you
days
go.
ago. Yeah, exactly. Right. All right. So, as I mentioned, we were wanting to talk about long-term, and I don't think we really specified. I actually just pitched it as long-term in a short-term world. That can be planning, that can be goals, that can be visions, that can be thinking, all of those different type of things. But our thought was kind of talking about it as more like a personal thing and then an investing thing. So where do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I'm kind of a broken record on the long-term thing, whether it be your personal budgeting, personal finance, or even on investing, right? Like, so, with my Warren Buffett fandom, it's basically, what's the safest way to ensure that in the long term you're going to be successful, and that's kind of how I approach just about everything when it comes to finances, investing, whether it's me personally or with the business, or even just per investment. So I figured we'd talk a little bit about how I think about it in my own personal life, and how I think it would behoove people to probably at least consider long-term thinking when their day-to-day lives. But half the problem, and I guess I'll start here, half the problem with personal finances that everybody has is that nobody has the time, or nobody kind of intentionally sets aside the time to think about long-term financial goals. Everybody's just day to day, hey man, I got to go to work, I get home, I got to cook dinner, and then hey, the game's on and I'm going to relax. And believe me, nobody's more susceptible to that than I am. It's like, hey man, the kids just went down and the Kansas game is coming on. My brain is going off. I'm going into just relax mode. I get it. But I think we do ourselves a disservice when we don't at some point take the time to sit down, step back from the day to day, and start doing some long-term either planning, goal setting, whatever it might be. Because what that ends up doing is that very much helps motivate and guide your day-to-day actions. and decisions that you make day to day is if you have something intentional that you're trying to work towards. Whether it be, I mean, we're talking that could be not just even financial, that could be physical, like, hey, I'm trying to get in shape. And if you sit down and say, hey, I want to lose 15 pounds by X date, then tonight while you're watching the game and you have a beer and a cookie, you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll forego the beer and cookie tonight because I'm working towards this goal that I've set and I've actually thought about, spent time intentionally planning how I'm going to get there, that kind of thing. So I figured we'd talk about long-term thinking, kind of start, like you said, with the personal, and then we'll kind of finish with some business and slash investment, and kind of how we at CVI, how we kind of incorporate that long-term thinking into our kind of our business plans and our investments. But I like the topic. I talk about it all the time. Half my posts on LinkedIn, I feel like, are some sort of delay some gratification today so that you can achieve the long-term goal kind of post. I feel like that's all I talk about.
Well, now maybe we can, bring more sides to the conversation than, the 200 to 300 words that put on LinkedIn, since that's about as much as you can with it for being
if that much.
If that, right. One of the reasons that I was interested in this, and I don't even mean necessarily, when I say personal, I don't necessarily mean like, oh, my personal long-term things, like how I thought about it, but just the idea itself. And yes, we all know there's kind of I would say the daily routine, working, coming home tired, taking care of kids, cooking, whatever, wanting to relax and go to bed. I mean, that's just kind of like,
that is life.
Yeah. That's just
perpetual.
Basic. Yeah. That's just the diurnal cycle, man. That's
that's what happens.
To bed. So there's that. Yes, there's the immediate gratification and all the different services and devices and options to
kind of geared towards getting you to do it right now.
Yeah,
whatever.
But more in my mind, I was interested in discussing kind of the ways in which, even if it's not, I wouldn't even necessarily call it gratification, just the world as it is right now. I'm not saying anything specific, just the life we go through daily pretty much has so much premium on immediacy. And I don't even necessarily, it may not even be gratification, right? It can be, oh, I have to respond to that email. I remember I was terrible at this when teaching, because it came to my phone. I think I got better once I finally took it off my phone, but because email came to my phone, I would be sitting there on the couch, or when I was supposed to be like, relaxing or spending time with friends or Rachel or whatever. Instead, I would be responding to emails because it came to my phone, when it was perfectly within my right and would have been just fine to wait until the next day. Yes, there are a lot of ways in which, if you're thinking about it on a money side, or attention side, I guess, that like there's immediate gratification, but there's also just a demand. I think just the way in which the world, the convenience and the access have also brought
like we
have a demand for immediacy.
Almost technology has allowed me to be able to tackle this now. Now I feel like I should just tackle this now, just because I can kind of thing. Like the email, now everything I can, pull up the investor portal on my phone and do this, that immediacy, the capability kind of leads us down the path of doing everything now and focusing on the now. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And I mean, and that now, whatever that now may be, even if it is, it's work and I mean, I'm not even necessarily here to talk about work-life balance. I'm just making the point. It could be a work thing. It could be a friend thing. It could be whatever. But the fact that it just seems like it's all there, always in front of us, that it makes it very hard to step back and even maybe reflect about the day, much less think about long-term
where
anything,
we want to be,
right?
Yeah.
And I mean, as someone we both, I guess, pivoted in our careers, but at this point, but as someone who thought they were going to do one thing for a long time, and then it didn't work out that way. You can have long-term plans and goals, and then you have to change them.
Sure.
They got to be updated. So it's not like it's a thing where you can just make a plan and then, set it in motion and be done, right? Like I'm going through the steps. Honestly, when I was teaching, that was one of the biggest impediments to a lot of students and their success, was they had a notion that they got really early about how it should be or what they had to do or where they should go or what they should, what they should study or whatever. And then when things didn't line up with that, they really struggled to adjust. They wanted like the world to change to kind of accommodate that.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone telling me that they wanted to be an engineer and I'm like, but you were just telling me how you were struggling in calculus. You were just talking to me about it because I know your math teacher and he's a good friend of mine, and I like calculus too, so let's talk about it. But I'm like, buddy, I don't want to speak ill of you, but if you're struggling at like high school calculus,
yeah, it's going to be a long road to that engineering degree.
Now maybe you turn it around, right? Maybe you just need some help and the right teachers and whatever. But there's also a decent chance that maybe this just
not the cards.
Yeah. So I'll say like that, since these things have to evolve, it can be very hard. I think this is more just a commiserative statement to find the time to think about it, even, I don't know, week, month.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's a fight that you have to fight in order to get there, because I think so much of that, it's almost overwhelming that like most of life is reactionary to what comes at you, what's happening on today, okay, boss said this, I got to do this today. And then, oh man, that means I can't do this tomorrow with so-and-so or whatever it might be. Like everything's a reaction. But the most successful people are able to find the time to be intentional about a certain amount of things in their life, to where it's not a reaction to what's coming at you, because there's no end to things coming at you. But it's if you're able to take some intentionality and influence, hey, I realize that this job is, requiring me to do X. I need to do a little bit of Y on the side in order to achieve this other, to intentionally, because it's not going to accidentally come to me. That's not how life works. Like, I'm going to have to make this happen if I want this to be, whether it's a different, completely different job, different skill set, maybe, I don't know, a different, you go back to school at night when you're, to learn to do completely different career that you actually want to do, whatever it might be. It's not going to happen on accident. I guess the long-term thinking is maybe it's just another way of saying you have to be intentional about your life in a way in order to achieve certain things. Because, I mean, I don't know a whole lot of people who became an engineer that they always wanted to be without focusing on how to get to school and the prerequisites to get there and all that kind of thing. Like, you have to do all that to get there. So you don't stumble into being to accomplishing things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's got to be intentional, and you have to start doing things. And like, we're talking about the personal side still, but you have to like start doing things intentionally. And once you start doing them, they become easier to do. It's kind of like habits. If you form certain habits, whether it's I got to go home and study it, for X amount of time each night after work or whatever. I know I'm just making some stuff up here, but if you're intentional, you start down that path, then you start working towards that reality that you're trying to basically manifest for yourself, whether it's financial, educational, life. I mean, it could be, I want to be able to dunk a basketball, as a young kid, it's okay. Well, I'm not just going to wake up and be able to jump really high one day, unless your name is LeBron James, I guess, because he definitely did. But the rest of us, if we're going to dunk a basketball, we're going to have to work on jumping and, all these different things, carrying a basketball, whatnot. You have to be intentional about it if it's actually a goal that you have and are willing to do what it takes to achieve.
Right. Speaking of that, and I was going to say fitness goals, you talked about your 40 by 40. How's that going?
So 2 months, a little over 2 months left.
Yeah.
I've lost, I'm about halfway there. So really not doing too bad, but I've put on so much muscle weight that
no big deal, guys.
And it's just the fact I've gotten significantly stronger, which is cool. And I feel really good about that, but I've put on so much muscle weight that it's kind of halted my weight loss. So I'm about halfway to my goal. Kind of stalled out. I'm in kind of a cut phase again right now. So we'll see kind of at the end of, like, I don't know, beginning of February, second week of February, we'll see where I'm at. But more than anything, it's kind of been a lifestyle change. I'm pretty happy with, I'm steadily going. I have a trainer that I'm working with. And like I said, I've gotten a lot stronger. And we're focused on, like, rule number one for Matthias is don't hurt Matthias. Don't hurt yourself while you're at the gym. It's priority number one for Matthias is to be able to walk tomorrow.
Yeah. So it sounds like almost like maybe you kind of had a goal, a declaration, and it was very pithy, 40 by 40.
Yeah.
But it may not be actually end up being the ultimate goal. Not that you miss it, but that it won't actually end up being the right.
Right. I honestly don't think. I think if I were to cut like all body fat, if I just had a magic wand and I could just click, I don't know that I would make it to all the way down because I've probably added 15, 20 pounds of weight in terms of muscle. You can see it in my shoulders probably.
Yeah, I agree with you though. When I go to the gym and they're like, "Oh, this is what you should do," and I'm like, "I'm gonna do like 75% of that," because especially with reps, I'm like, I don't need to do that many. It's something you never thought about earlier in life,
for sure.
Well, as we transition, I guess to the other side, just talking about maybe kind of CVI's goal on this. I just know for me, I think it's kind of interesting that you got to have this intentionality and you gotta set the stuff aside. That's very true. And I was just thinking about your tent being a sieve, because these days it's so hard. It can be really hard. It used to be you could just like literally just go home and like you're not gonna you're not gonna get in contact. You can't get in contact with your friends, like really, like, or only one of them at a time. Right. There wasn't all these things, so I can understand the people's struggles with everything that's going on and how we all feel like whatever's in front of us is like the thing that has to be done. Because I know personally the way that I work is I'm not a step-by-step guy. Okay, these are the big things, and I'm going to kind of just like everything is going to kind of just be geared toward that, right? It's not like a schedule and it's like at this time I'm doing this thing. It's like, no, this is basically all I do now, in some form or fashion. And that's how it was when I was getting the PhD and when I want to do that, and then teaching, same thing. So everyone has their own way of setting those goals and going about them. But I think it takes an extra step of mental intentionality and fortitude to push the things away. Because again, it's not necessarily like you're goofing off for gratification. It can be something that feels like it's an important thing to do. Right. It's a prioritization thing. It's like you got to be able to prioritize the things that were actually going to get you to those goals, and sometimes at the expense of other intermediate goals or other things that's the thing can be tough.
It could be immediate. Hey, I know I need to invest in my Roth IRA. I haven't maxed it out yet this year. I want to go out to dinner on a date or whatever, but that $150 I was going to spend on a very nice dinner, date or whatever, maybe I need to forego that. Even though, it's not a wrong thing to do, and I'm sure your significant other, spouse or whatever would appreciate it. And maybe, I don't necessarily want you to do things at the expense of your relationship in order to achieve another thing. But I'm just saying, like, there may be priorities that cost something that's equally good or also good in order to achieve the longer term goal, which, hey, and maybe that's a conversation you have with your significant other is like, hey, we're trying to work towards this level of financial freedom at a certain time in our lives. Maybe let's forego, or we'll have ramen noodles in the living room and watch some Netflix tonight and save and work on that future goal versus going to Ruth's Chris and spending $100.
I'm sorry, do you mean like whatever ramen as in the company, or just ramen as in the type, the actual? Because you're going, that's a big bro. You went on 180. You went from like going to a nice dinner to eating what
it doesn't have to be to that level, but it got the point across.
Sure. I mean, it's obviously good caveat there when you're talking about priorities. You're like, and then it's relationship, money. Maybe instead you fix the dinner.
Yeah,
that's,
sure.
The kind of thing.
Like I said, ramen.
I mean, I haven't.
We had it over. It was I tell you what, around a campfire in the cold. It's pretty great. We had steak and ramen because I got a little griddle and I cooked the steak on the griddle, and we had a little pot and cooked the ramen on the fire itself, and the boys ate it up. We ate it up. It was great. Just like the little packets.
In that scenario,
crunched up a couple of packets. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's we have this awesome international grocery store, I guess is what you call it, called Super G, which it's huge and literally like it just has aisle for it's like it literally is like India, and it's like Africa.
North America, there you go.
And they are very serious about the ramen. Like it's
sure.
You can get any kind of ramen that you think of.
Nice. Probably a lot you couldn't think of.
They have all of the Asian cuisine. So it's like the real deal. When Bethany was up here visiting, she bought, I think it was My Little Pony rice ramen for Tinsley.
Oh,
she was
nice.
like, wow, this is kind of expensive. I was like, well, yeah, there's others that are not proprietary.
Yeah, you're paying for the My Little Pony. You're not paying for the ramen.
That somebody, just made ramen. Anyways, that's a sidetrack. But yeah, to make the switch, I guess. How these ideas manifest in our business strategy would make that move.
Something that, honestly, the newsletter that came out as we record this came out today kind of talks about it, because it's like, hey, the way we pick and choose our investments, we focus on the long term. We do not have short term. We don't aim to do short term investments. So short term investment typically only capitalizes on appreciation or requires depreciation in order to be successful. Like if you're a house flipper, that's kind of a relatively short term for real estate, but you're buying that thing assuming that when you finish X, you're not going to be in a market crash, because you know what I mean? Like you assume that you're going to be able to do this work, and then at the end of that work, 6 months, 8 months, a year, and a year and a half, however long it takes to do this project, that on the other side, you're going to have a market where you can sell at that premium that you calculated at the beginning. Now, the problem with that is that if the market doesn't cooperate and something happens from the time that you buy to the time you're able to sell, that investment becomes a failure, because your holding costs every month that you have to hold on to that property and aren't able to sell, at least sell at the price you wanted to, it detracts from your investment. So you might have to put a rent to rent. You might have to do all sorts of different
stuff. If you
stuff.
renovated to sell at a premium, means you probably overspent for rent.
100%. Exactly. Yeah. So that requires the market to keep appreciating, or at the very least not have the bottom fall out, which, that's what happened to everybody in 07, 08, is that everybody's like, the market is appreciating 5% every year. Why wouldn't I buy, hold for a couple of years, and then just sell, and I'll make a ton of money? Well, as it turns out, you need the market to keep doing something in order for you to make any money on that. And so yes, we do a value add process, but we do a value add over a long term, where we typically aim to finish our stabilization at around the 3-year mark, let's say, in our projects, depending on the size of the property and what all we got to do, things like that. But 3-year mark, okay, well, if in the 3-year mark, what if there's a market collapse or whatever, and whatever we planned on it being worth at that point, it's not worth at that point? Well, that's not great. We don't like to see that, but we bought for the long term, meaning we don't have to do anything at that point. We're a cash flowing asset that's paying all of our investors as we go. And if we're stabilized on time, there's no reason we need to sell. Yes, our loan will come due, and maybe if the market crashes, we're not going to get the same valuation, so we may not be able to pull a bunch of cash. So obviously that's not optimal scenario, but in no way does it affect the intrinsic value of our property, because we just hold it for another 3 years until the market comes back, and then we've it's just a blip, right, in the radar, and that's the long term thinking that we go to buy in, is that we're able to remove that market risk, the crash risk, as it were, as much as we possibly can from the scenario, from our investment. That risk is minimized and hedged against, because we plan on holding things for long term. We buy with long term debt. We don't do variable rates, so we don't need, it doesn't matter what interest rates are going to do. We optimize for the long term, and sometimes that sacrifices the short term potential. But again, you're safe from so many different risks if you optimize your investments for the long term. And that's the way we think, is that rule number one, Warren Buffett, rule number one of investing is don't lose money. And if you're thinking for the long term, you're set up in a way that will protect you from kind of the ways you can lose money, especially in real estate and apartment investing.
Yeah, I'm wondering what you would say to someone who was like, well, markets can have downturns to the point that there would be no one to rent, I guess, would be not a doomsday scenario, but more like an extreme, like how could it go wrong type scenario.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's, I guess they could say, a wise investor shoots bullets, as many spears as they can, into their plan to see, like, hey, would it be resistant to XYZ if XYZ were to happen?
Right. Because it's possible. It's been well advertised that in some cities there's tons of places that are just sitting empty. Now that's more on the commercial office space side. But I mean, what's kind of the go-to answer there? Just the fact that that's the market that will not be dwindling.
Well, that's we protect against that by the asset class that we're in. I mean, we don't buy the top of the line apartments that require, we're not aiming for the richest of the young professionals who want to be downtown loft apartment, boutique, trendy. We don't hang out with that. We hang out in the B and C class, blue collar, young family, up and coming white collar. That there's always going to be that market, even in a downturn. Those, like in a recession, sometimes those markets appreciate more because you've got the young stockbroker who lost his job at Lehman Brothers. Now he's going to go live in a Class C apartment with a roommate because he's got to find another job or wait out the market crash or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like they can come down. If we start at the top, very few people are going to come down to us. But if we're in the kind of think trades, plumbers and those type of people that even in a downturn, people still have toilets, people still have electrical problems, and you're still building houses, still doing construction around. Like those blue collar jobs, those trades jobs are always going to exist, and that we try to stay in that range. So we protect against those downturns with the asset class. You know what I mean? Obviously, if an asteroid hits Earth, all bets are off. Like everybody's running for the hills and. Hopefully, you were aboard an airplane when that happens or something. But other than that, I mean, we protect with the type of asset that we buy. That's why we're not in office, even though back in the day, people were making a killing in offices. And, people are making a lot of money in self-storage, but until everybody heard about it. And now self-storage really isn't doing all that well. There's all these different classes, but multifamily is the one that's kind of the slow and steady wins the race because it's the thing that there's 340 million people in the U.S., all of them like to live. I won't say all of them. Some of them do like to live outdoors, but everybody else likes to live inside. And that's why we focus on the affordable housing sector of asset classes. And that protects us from the vast majority of what we could experience. We may be sacrificing some short-term returns, but if we stay in this asset class,
right. Yeah.
We're protected over the long term from, blips.
Right. I think it's interesting that, so much of for lack of a better term, commercial activity in just the world really, but we'll just stick to the United States. So much of the economic activity is those basic things, right? Which is funny. I mean, it was basically the basic things that enable people to live, go through their daily life. Even though we were just saying, hey, forget about your daily life for a second.
Yep.
But I'm just thinking about this note I saw on Substack where this guy, I don't even know, it just popped up. You know how that is. Like they think the algo, put him in front of me.
Just throws you stuff.
Where he was essentially saying that he doesn't understand why the retail investor would buy big market cap stocks, like the ones that everybody knows. There's no margin. You need to be looking at small ones or private ones or all this stuff. And I mean, I know what he's trying to say, but and this is literally something like, according to his little thing, is like what he does is trying to look for those kind of out of the way assets that maybe there's something there that no one sees. I'm like, but so I promise you there's 2 points on this. One, It's like, well, if everyone's going through their day-to-day life and they are retail investors, they don't have time to like go do the research. Because he was like, oh, there's more, you could find your own little area if you just research on these other ones rather than, the thing that everybody knows about. Well, first of all,
sure, if you're a brilliant, stock picker, then that's what you do all day.
Or if like, I guess you're just, it's like, yeah, I have a day job, but this is what I do. And this was more to his point, I guess, was like, look for ones that like you kind of come across. But yeah, exactly. It's like, maybe you come across a great business that allows you to invest into, like, buy into it. That's more private than like obviously a publicly traded security.
Sure.
So I was like, well, yeah, everybody buys these things because they're safe and they don't have to do all the research because everyone else has already done them.
And it also depends on what the goal is of the investment. Are you trying to invest in the next, NVIDIA before it becomes NVIDIA? Like, If your goal is to become filthy rich because you found a diamond in the rough, like, okay, sure, then he should go about. Yeah, you're not going to do that with a large cap, with a Apple, because it's already there. If everybody knows about it, it's already happened.
Yeah.
But if most people are investing because they want to be able to retire one day, and you don't do that by picking a diamond in the rough. You do that by investing in solid businesses over the long time.
Exactly. So I was like, well, first of all, it just answered your own question because they are not professional stock pickers. But, on the other side of that, it was interesting to think, well, yeah, one of the things that I agree with on that is that I think so many people, when they think about investing, and this goes to your point of like what the asset class we're buying, how it's going to just continue kind of to chug along pretty much, it has all the buttresses, as it were, to downturns, et cetera. That the other reason that everyone buys that is because that's what they think is there to buy. Right.
Yeah. That's what they know about.
What I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. Which is one of the big things that's why we're doing this. Right. Like, hey, if you build this stock portfolio and you're like, okay, I have these well-known stocks, I've got my Nvidia, my Netflix, and my Apple, and my Google, and okay, great. Well, you could also, there's this whole other world over here that so few people, I feel like, contemplate.
Yeah, 100%. Well, they don't know about it. Yeah, you can't invest in what you've never heard of.
Exactly. So that was kind of my point by bringing this guy up. It's like, well, yeah, there's two parts of this answer that you already gave yourself, which is either they don't have the time or they're not taking the time to do the research. And also the people you're talking about, the retail investors that you just referred to, don't even know what half of what you just said means. Because he was talking about like, oh, places with like toxic debt. He was like lifting out all these terms. I'm like,
yeah, it's like the guy who works retail at as a manager at Walmart does not know how to read a balance sheet of a tech company. You know what I mean? Like he's not going, oh no, this debt expires in 2027 and they're corporate bonds or whatever, blah blah blah. Like he's not gonna, 100%.
And there's no like
it's gibberish to him.
I mean, I'm not going to either. Like, oh, here's an angle to like, I can buy in this way and then shed this and siphon off, spin this off, and then this becomes a completely different thing. And there's a great IP here that's surrounded by all this. Like, what?
He's basically standing up in the middle and yelling, "Why doesn't everybody know what I know?" Because they don't know what you know, dude.
Don't you want to be the one who knows and they don't, that provide some value? But all that to be said is that is the goal, I guess, is what all that's it is, that for people to find out about things like not just us, but the other ways in which they can get involved in solid businesses that don't have fanfare and maybe not even have don't have stocks. There's all these different ways to be an investor. I feel like maybe it's just my imagination, but I feel like most people think it's either like you own a company or you own stock. It's like, well, there's a lot of other things going on there.
There's a lot in between. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it all does tie back. If you're able to step back from the day to day and kind of do things intentionally, thinking on a long term, we talked about how that's 100% our business plan is, we try to thinking long term allows us to remove a lot of the risks outside of our control, like the market turns and the interest rates and whatnot, general economic stuff. The longer term we think, the less impact that has on our overall plan, because it gives us more control over what's going on. And in the personal life, I think if it guides your, 10% of your actions on a daily basis, you're going to end up better off than if you were just purely reacting instead of forcing, whatever you can. I'm going to intentionally do these things every day or once a week or whatever, what have you, in order to accomplish these long-term goals that I realize that the universe is not just going to throw to me unless I can do some take some intentional steps to get there.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I was just reminded of a conversation with a buddy who was falling into this trap. But there's the idea of prioritizing is so often, the older I get. Yeah, here we go. There, I'm already. Listen to me. No, it's one of those things where you're young, you feel like you can do anything. All it takes is a matter of like, I can just shift gears, as it were, or like not like shift into gear, but like just change. Go this way, go that way, whatever. So the older you get, the more you realize like every single one of those if there's a sacrifice there, right? So the thing that you want to
Trade-offs,
do
yeah.
is going to be a sacrifice of something else. Even if it's a good thing, it might actually sacrifice another good thing.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And like making that decision about which one you want to do can be
well, it's part of
it can be really
it's
tough.
part of
Yeah.
100%, and it's part of achieving the success at this level or achieving success at this level. Is like sometimes you have to choose the tough trade-offs, the ones that don't feel particularly good in the moment, because you know you're trading something good that you could have now versus something good in the future. That's a really rudimentary way to look at it, but that's essentially what life is, whether it's your educational, your business, your investment strategy, your personal finances, whatever it is. Those prioritizations and trade-offs that's what life is all about. And if you do enough of the trade-offs in the right way, that long term, you're going to come out a whole lot better.
The good news is on the investing side, it's actually a little bit more straightforward, especially with our kind of model, than it is like the life side, because you could go for something in life, make what you think are all the right choices that could have been right choices, and then it's just not pan out. But in this instance of investing in good assets or whatever, that's probably going to always going to end up.
Yeah, on the average, it's going to end up.
Yeah. Especially, like you referenced your newsletter today. I think that's a great point, because as far as controlling factors where you can, right? Operational efficiencies, ensuring that cost, right? That's the other side of this balance sheet. The costs aren't rising. The costs are being limited as much as possible, maintains value, and perhaps even increases NOI without needing rents to go up or, right. So it's, again, controlling the things you can control in that regard.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to say that we bloviated too long or longer than normal, although we did go a little all over the place at some points. But
story time was long today.
There was just a lot of stories. Yeah, there was some camping stories that had to be told.
Yeah, I hope it was riveting, because it was quite shocking for me at the time.
Oh man, Aaron, I'm happy to hear he bounced back. 35 and wet, 35, 40 degrees and wet and windy. That's the worst, honestly.
Oh yeah, it was cold. It was cold. That was especially. Yeah, for him, he's not used to it.
I would much rather experience the winters in like the mountains where it gets in the teens or even single digits than the winter in Baton Rouge where it's just like 38 and raining the whole time. Yeah,
it's that moisture, man.
You can't. Yeah,
misery.
I feel like you can't get dry. So, well, good luck on the tent shopping.
Thanks.
I'm interested to see how you go about that, but otherwise we'll get out of here. As always, if you guys have any thoughts, comments, questions, want to reach out, want to get involved, reach out to us on Substack, on LinkedIn. You can comment on Spotify. You can jump on the website, send us a comment through there. Any way that you want to reach out, we'd be happy to hear from you. Otherwise, we're going to get out of here, and we appreciate you listening. We hope you come back next week for another edition of the Get Invested podcast.
Yep.